Opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not WSTU. WSTU does not endorse any products mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU.
The Treasure Coast longest running local talk radio show is on the air. The Treasure Coast Forum. Get interested, get educated, get involved, and give us a call with your opinions at 220-9788. And here's your host of the Treasure Coast Forum.
Hey everybody, it's Nick Lynch, and I'm back with the Treasure Coast Forum on 1450 WSTU, Martin County's Heritage Station. To kick off this special episode, I would like to introduce my two co-hosts for this evening, Noyana Pierre-Louis and John Simpson. They are both students at South Fork High School here in Martin County, and they are extremely active in youth and government. John, do you want to talk to us about your experience with youth and government and what YIG means to you?
Sure, Nick. Well, I'm kind of a sophomore in YIG now. I did YIG for like 3 years. I did JYIG. That was extremely fun. We had a bunch of meetings. We went to different we visited a bunch of delegations across the state. And we met with a bunch of people all over. And last year I did Y Corps. We traveled all along the coast, helped people out from the hurricanes. We helped a lady paint her house. We helped local turtles in need. It was pretty fun, to be honest.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And Noyana, do you want to talk about a few issues you feel passionate about and what YIG means to you?
Well, currently what I'm extremely focused on and passionate about is what is the truth in our world, especially us being the youth and the future makers of tomorrow. And youth and government has kind of allowed me to discover that passion and truth within myself, since I've been able to collaborate and join hands with amazing, strong-minded people, and it's just a nurturing environment where we all can grow, and it's just amazing, especially since it is one of my life goals to become an attorney, and being in the judicial program has some benefits and will most likely help me out to achieving that goal.
Definitely. Yeah, you definitely find a lot of attorneys here at Youth and Government, future attorneys. So unfortunately, your usual hosts, Jillian Plymel and Emma Gardner, were not able to join me on the call today, but rest assured, they will be back soon. So to kick off today's special episode, I'm going to start with our regular segment, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. For today's good news, a bequest from a former birdwatcher and volunteer at Sebastian Inlet State Park will make finding feathered friends at the park a lot easier. Bonnie Lizer, a Florida resident who died last year, left $1 million to the Florida State Parks Foundation. This gift will be used to help clean up state park habitats and create birdwatching trails. Now for today's bad news. The Dow plunged over 800 points at today's low, and the S&P 500 as well as the NASDAQ Composite finished in record territory on Wednesday, but were down 3.4% and 4.8% respectively. Apple and Amazon were among the hardest hit names. And finally, for the ugly news, Georgia police arrested a suspect accused of dragging a deputy while fleeing a traffic stop. Richmond County Deputy Keith Inman pulled Kaylon Smith over in Augusta, and a canine dog alerted him to the odor of narcotics in the vehicle. From their stop, it went bad to worse. So please keep Officer Inman and his family in your thoughts. Now, before the show, John brought up an interesting article about Miami-Dade schools. John, do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, so since Miami-Dade's in the start of the year and they haven't had any online school before, it made their internet system very, very, accessible to hackers. People started hacking in from all over, messing with the system. Kids couldn't get on Zoom. Nobody, and I mean nobody in the students could get on. I mean, one of my friends, he couldn't access it for a couple days at least, and all the teachers, they couldn't do anything about it. It was honestly a horrible situation. It's still going on.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting how susceptible things are becoming because of coronavirus. Noyana, do you have any insight into this?
I do not, but I can imagine, especially since some people aren't even used to being in online school, since I can speak from personal experience. I've been in public school since I was a child, so people being thrown into a situation where they're they might be putting their own family members at risk by going to school and just not being familiar or not even having the technology. I can imagine.
Yeah, it definitely does bring up a lot of privacy concerns, especially when it concerns student safety. So it's going to be interesting to see how Miami-Dade County mitigates this prevalent problem. All right, now for another piece of unfortunate news, Louisiana's power grid needs complete rebuild after Hurricane Laura. The restoration is set to take weeks, if not months, to complete. The main power utility for Southwest Louisiana will need to rebuild the region's grid after Hurricane Laura blasted the region with 150-mile-per-hour winds last week. Top officials said Wednesday that this Category 4 hurricane made landfall and obliterated South Louisiana, especially the Lake Charles and Cameron region. It was damaging and destroyed thousands of electric poles, as well as left catastrophic damages to the transmission system for all of Southwest Louisiana. The Etergy Louisiana president and CEO Philip May said in a statement that it's almost a complete rebuild of our transmission and distribution system that serves all of Louisiana. So this hurricane caused a huge problem with Louisiana's power grid and their industrial capabilities. And it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to rebuild and work towards a better future. And that kind of brings us to another concern of how cautionary weather and these extreme weather events are causing a lot of damage throughout the world. And there's really no way to fix it. You guys have any more on that you want to talk about?
Well, from my point of view, I actually find that pretty horrible. I mean, like, firstly, most people don't really know how to survive with, like, no electricity. I mean, and most of the time you just go up to your refrigerator, get water, go to your sink, get water. But now they're going to have to find a way to survive without electricity. And I mean, most of us can't really do that. I'm just hoping they'll be okay and they get food and water distributed to them easily. Secondly, I'm really worried about their school system because, I mean, everything's already online and you just get hit with a hurricane. I mean, how's that going to work? Your kids have to go to school, they get a risk of infection, or they don't go in school and they still can't go to school because there's no internet because of electricity. I just find it an outright horrible situation.
Yeah, these weather events could not have come at a worse time. And then, Noyana, I know you had an interesting opinion piece about the truth. Do you want to start that segment?
Sure. And starting it, actually, I'm going to ask both of you guys a question for your opinion first.
Great.
So, what do you guys think is the truth?
I think the truth is something that is always consistent. It's something that is always consistent and doesn't waver in any way.
Interesting. John, and you?
Personally, if we're talking about like what's true to me, I'd say it's something that just stands right by me. And like no matter what the situation, I can stick by it without any problems.
I agree, even though I have a different spin on it. I mean, because my definition of the truth would be something that you believe in, that you find value in, and that has no malicious intent behind that truth, and that serves as a motivation for you to go out into the world and to be a better person. And actually, I received an explanation from a teacher when I asked her about the subject of what is the truth, and I really appreciated it. So I would like to actually share it with you all. So what she said is that people are trying to control the truth. And in doing so, this is a disservice to everyone. If one were to truly value the meaning of democracy, those who hold the news, who hold the truth, who hold the pieces of information that allow us to grow and to be stronger and to possess knowledge about what is going on within our world, that gives everything to democracy, honestly, because the reason why democracy in general has so much meaning is because it is fueled by the pure American desire to find the truth. And love also serves as a motivation for for what is factual to us. And if one is not pursuing the truth in love and to see others become better in light of it, one is headed for death. And the way she described it is as it was a fork in a road. Are you going down the path of life and growth, or are you headed for death? And it really just made me understand and realize that many do not know or realize or get to live or see the power that truth holds. And I'd like to provide you guys with an example. According to Statistica.com, data was taken within the U.S. around June 2020, with about 1,001 respondents for each poll, the age group being 18 years or older. And these people voted on what was the most important problem that the U.S. was facing. The top three answers were 21% was dissatisfied with the government, 20% were concerned with the spread of the virus, and 19% were concerned about racial relations and racism within America. The thing is that even with this information presented, when I had gone searching for something even more accurate, this was the most reliable source of information. And even then, there are things missing within it. We don't know who these 1,001 people are. We don't know where they're from, their background, their political stances. All of this could affect this data that I just gave you. And having an important conversation with a group of friends, I even then discovered that finding out information like this doesn't even come down to what one believes to be an issue within our country. I learned that it's not even as deep as struggling to find statistics, but the lack of value for accurate and reputable information to begin with is why there's such a scarcity for it. They made me learn and realize that the most important thing to the people who give us the information that we hold dear only desire clicks, money, and that overrules the truth that we need. What is not realized is that people are receiving sometimes false or skewed information, which causes the public to take action upon that information. The protests that occur all the time for social justice, for example, people lose their lives over these things or severely hurt or affected because they are acting upon a false truth that was pushed out to them. One of my biggest things is that ever since I was a kid in 6th grade, I was told that because I was gifted and that I possessed knowledge over all the other kids in my grade, I was going to be one of the future makers. And many people with me who think like me carry the same weight. The children, teens, young adults are pressured every day to take action for the future. We carry the weight of being the older generation's future makers. We have quotes like, "Children are our greatest treasure. They are our future," Nelson Mandela. And the youth is our hope, is the hope of our future, Jose Rizal. And if this is the case, something needs to be made clear. The future is created by action taken in the present. Action cannot happen without a thought or idea first forming within the mind. Without the proper knowledge or truth for us as the youth to access, how are we supposed to be the problem solvers of tomorrow? I have another example for you. Listen to these 5 headlines presented when speaking upon the tragic shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha and that relation to Trump, which sadly happened over this passing weekend. Trump to visit riot hit Kenosha after promising no tolerance for violence. Fox News. Trump says he won't meet with Jacob Blake's family because they wanted to involve lawyers. CNN. White House claims Trump trip to Kenosha unifying, says he will tour damaged businesses. ABC News. Trump defends Kenosha shooting suspect. NPR. Trump's tweets doesn't sit well in Kenosha a day before his expected arrival. Kenosha News. I need to ask, with everybody listening, seeing everybody who is the youth, looking at these 5 narratives through our perspectives, where do we fit in this story? How are we supposed to find the truth? What future are we supposed to make tomorrow based on these 5 different narratives of one event that occurred? Where is the truth in all of this? How do we find it? How far must we go? Because I was raised upon the notion that if you have the truth, you will be set free. Thank you.
Wow, that was truly amazing, Noyana. And I love the discussion that brought. So to have a little bit of guided discussion right now, as well as with you guys, the listeners, if you want to call in, our number is 220-WSTU. Again, that it will be 220-9788. So why don't we talk about some of the truths that are being kind of thrown at us right now? From everything to truths from the Democratic National Convention, Republican National Convention, all of these statistics that are getting thrown around. And like Noyana said, we have to kind of struggle and we have to fight through all of these statistics and claims and impacts. And we just have to figure out what the truth is. Now, let me ask you guys, what do you think our truth is right now in American politics? What are we looking for in a president? What are we trying to strive for as a nation? Things like that.
Well, Nick, I would have to say, from just like my point of view, I think people are looking for like a strong, determined president who's just trying to push the nation forward, maybe stop the spread of corona, make teachers have better pay salaries, just overall make our government and our system better, maybe enhance our like schooling system. Because, for example, you see a school overseas in Asia, they pay their teachers, they're the top of the top, nobody else but the top of their class. You look in America, they go to college and they get minimum wage. I will repeat that, minimum wage. And for what? They school our new children. They bring our nation to light. Overall, it just brings our nation down and down. We're searching for a president who's strong and who will bring us change, not put us back, just lead us to the future is what I think, Nick.
I can't agree more. I know specifically I'm looking for a president, like you said, or just an American political system that's trying to reinvest in our country's future. So like you said, we need to invest in education, and I think we need to invest in evaluating our dollar, strengthening our currency. I think we need to invest in industry and working towards a stronger America as a whole. And I know you just talked about this so much, Noyana, but personally, what are you looking for? What is your truth? What are you trying to find the truth for in American politics?
Honestly, I have to be honest. I do not know much about American politics, but I do know what I'm going to do in order to bring some sort of change that can be of value to the people of our country. And while talking to a friend, I came to a realization. And that begins with education, just as John said. And this means asking people that you know, hey, who's our governor? Who's on our city council? Who is representing Florida? Who's representing Martin County, right? Because I have to be honest with you, I don't even know that, which means I'm not doing my part in making a greater future for tomorrow, right? So it's things like these. We need to start locally, find people who do speak this truth that we want to be presented, and then move upwards and make a stance going forward, obviously, right? And it's, I don't know. And then it's also something that I'm very strong in is individualism. You know, it's great that people can come together, but it's what they're doing when they're coming together. Are there new ideas being formed? What are the innovations? What are the plans? Because we are young. We have this gift of being creative. We have all this energy. We have all this life. We have a miracle that only lasts for so long. And what I see today, which is really, really saddening, is that our youth is giving in to the devices and the technology that have been placed on this earth to help us. But really, we're being brainwashed. We're becoming followers. We're going with the norm. We're being sheep rather than the shepherd, rather than leading, rather than looking at things and questioning things and seeing, hey, does this line up with what I believe in? Does this line up with my morals and my values? Is this okay? Should this, and this doesn't even have to be on for politics. This is just in general in life. Because if you cannot make those small decisions to step up when somebody needs to take the plate, how are we as a consensus expected to do so if when it comes to our government and our politics?
Yeah. And I know one thing I always preach on this show is just getting out and voting. We have presidential elections coming up, and we're at a really interesting year because we're going to have a lot of turnover, and we've got our census going on. So this is a very important time to be active, especially with all the political unrest in our country right now. But I always preach to go out and vote, make a voting plan. But like Noyana said, you have to be an informed voter. It's not all about just going and voting. If you're not informed about what's going on, you don't know who or what you're voting for. We see that in local, national, all forms of politics. And I think that's a great way to end this part of the show. So I guess now we'll go to break. Thanks, everybody. Hey everybody, it's Nick Lynch, and I'm back with the Treasure Coast Forum on 1450 WSTU, Martin County's Heritage Station. I know we just left with a huge discussion on the truth and what that means to us. So if any callers would like to weigh in, our number to call in is 220-WSTU. Again, that'll be 220-9788. So to get back to a bit of local news, I read a super interesting article this morning about inmates. So 6 deputies and 16 inmates at St. Lucie County Jail tested positive for COVID-19. According to Sheriff Ken Mascara, the inmates are currently in isolation and not experiencing any symptoms. One of the detention deputies had to be hospitalized and put on a ventilator, which was removed over the weekend. Luckily, due to the new cases, the agency has contacted the local health department for recommendations on how to stop the spread. It is also worth it to note that in May, 2 inmates and a food service worker tested positive, as well as last month, Mascara, the sheriff himself, contracted the virus after returning from a sheriff's event in Southwest Florida. What do you guys think about the current virus cases within our prisons and jails?
Well, personally, I find it I find it really horrible that a virus is going on and that it's affecting prisons. Because, I mean, there's usually like a couple prisoners, maybe 2 per cell. And I imagine that they don't have masks usually. And then everything's shared. You have a cafeteria, everybody goes out together and eat together. Imagine that, thousands, hundreds of people just in close proximity, breathing on each other, just touching each other, just everything. They don't have space. They can't just stand 6 feet apart and then just march to their jail cells. It's rather horrible, in my opinion. It's really horrible.
I mean, yeah, I have to agree. But I mean, I'm even thinking about what kind of treatment are they going to get if they're suffering from the side effects that we've all been warned about, like pneumonia, shortness of breath, muscle aches to the point where you can't even move, like extreme drowsiness. That, I mean, what kind of treatments are they going to get, especially if they're in prison, especially if they're inmates?
Which leads us to a larger question. Other than putting masks on the inmates and trying to keep them socially distant, I don't know how, ethically we could keep inmates so close to each other using the same facilities day in and day out. If you guys had any input on that, I would love to hear it.
I really can't think of any way we could do it ethically, because we're human. We're compassionate about each other. We can't just blatantly put somebody in harm's way and say, take it. We care for one each other. We can't just do that to another person knowing there's a human life on the line. It's just not morally right to us.
Yeah. And then along those same lines, John, do you want to talk about that IDE arrest segment you had?
Oh, sure, Nick. Okay, so recently there was an ICE arrest.
No.
It was rather large, too, about 2,000 immigrants and other victims. Well, not victims, other people were arrested. It was mainly aimed at convicts, felons. I support that. And it's rather easy to do that during a pandemic while they're home and they're just home. You can go at them and arrest them. But I find it and I'm really passionate about it, I don't find it right that you can just sweep an entire neighborhood just for them and arrest immigrants in the process. I mean, they do so much to help our economy behind the screens. They can help, they help do things such as in the fields. They do things behind the scenes such as tech. They do everything with us. And we can't just deport them just because they're immigrants. And I find it personally wrong because, I mean, we didn't technically come here. Indians were here before us. So who are we to just deport other immigrants when we are ourselves immigrants? I just find that hypocritical in a way. Because, I mean, you can't really do that if you already did it yourself. So it's just rather wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then another piece of national news, the Congressional Budget Office just dropped a historic projection for the U.S. economy. It said government debt will reach 98% of the GDP in the fiscal year 2020, which ends this month, and will surpass 100% of the GDP in the next fiscal year, which starts October 1st. The debt to GDP ratio used to contextualize every country's debt, and it's been the highest it's been for years at currently 98% for the U.S. in generations. The last time U.S. debt exceeded GDP, aka economic output, was in 1946 after the government financed World War II. And to look at how we got here, as a result of increased government spending in 2017's tax cuts, U.S. debt was on the rise before the pandemic, but the country's finances took two major attacks earlier this year. Congress passed trillions of dollars in relief spending just as pandemic restrictions dried up government tax revenues. And then for the look ahead at this, most economists and lawmakers agree that another round of relief measures are necessary, but the negotiations have been stalled for about a month now, as Democrats push for a $3 trillion plan and Republicans counter with a $1 trillion tax deficit. So I don't really know how the economy is going to respond to, or the U.S. economy is going to respond to this debt to GDP ratio, because we've never seen anything like this aside from war times. And we don't have the industry to kind of make that gross domestic product that we used to have. So I don't know if we'll just continue to accrue debt, or if we will somehow if we're going to try to implement new infrastructure and investment into industries to ramp up our gross domestic product. If anyone has any insight on that and would like to call in, please do. And then, Noyana, I know you have more on social justice and protests. Do you want to get into that?
Sure. In fact, this might be a little bit of history lesson for all of you guys who are out there listening. So I'd like to take us back into time to where we had examples of those who paved the way for peaceful protests. As what people are protesting for today actually do mirror what leaders protested for back in the day. In fact, let's take a look at the Montgomery bus boycott. In December 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, one of the first major protests began. Rosa Parks, a black woman, refused to give her bus seat to a white passenger, as required by the city's segregation laws. She was arrested and jailed for her defiant and courageous act. This success of the one-day boycott inspired black leaders to organize a long-term boycott. They demanded an end-to-end segregation on the city's buses. Until this demand was met, black people would refuse to ride Montgomery's buses. A young Baptist minister named Martin Luther King Jr. led this boycott. And this is actually one of my favorite quotes from him, because it really does represent everything that I stand for and what I believe in. As he says, "We decided to raise up only with the weapon of protest." King says, "It is one of the greatest glories of America. Don't let anyone pull you so low as to hate them. We must use the weapon of love." The tactic of nonviolence proved effective in hundreds of civil rights protests in the racially segregated South. Another peaceful protest I'd like to bring to you, the sit-ins. In February 1960, 4 black college freshmen sat down at a segregated Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, and politely asked to be served. They were ignored, but remained seated until the counter closed. The next day, they returned with more students who sat peacefully at the counter waiting to be served. They, like the protesters in Montgomery, were practicing nonviolent civil disobedience. Let me say that again. They were practicing nonviolent civil disobedience. As a word of them spread, other students in the cities throughout the South started staging sit-ins. By April 1960, more than 50,000 students had joined in sit-ins. Students in many cities endured taunts, arrests, and even beatings, but their persistence had paid off. Many targeted businesses began to integrate. They had finally been given the change that they had demanded. And that is the beauty of our nation and our country, as we are given the right within our First Amendment to peacefully assemble. What is seen within our world right now is chaos despite our efforts to put in the change for the social and racial issues within our country. The looters, the violent protesters, the peaceful protesters, the irresponsible police officers, and the bystanders that wish to bring harm onto those who walk in the path of hope for a brighter future are wrong in this very crucial time. You see, I may be young, and I may not have all the answers or even the experience to say what is 100% right or wrong within our world today. But I do believe in the message of peace, that every single human life on this earth is worthy to hold an opinion, worthy to express those opinions and truths and beliefs as long as they are not harming another. They have the right to walk the streets and demand peace, change, justice. I believe that walking with faith, strength, and courage speaks louder than any violence on any side. Whether you are a police officer, a bystander, a protester, move with peace. Move, protect with love. Have empathy for the victims of these crimes and their families. The media can and will misconstrue the story. They will paint the worst image possible, regardless of what it may be. But history has proven time and time again that even if there is violence, that even if there is injustice, peace will always speak volumes over violence. And to those who seek and understand the truth, they will all also recognize that. Which is why we need to take examples. Those were only two out of the many beautiful protests that thousands have stood up and fight for the same issues that we are dealing with today. I understand that there's much loss, that there's much pain, that there's anger, and you may not know the right way to deal with these conflicting emotions, but I personally believe that we need to move with peace.
Again, another amazing performance from Noyana. With that, we will go to break, but when we come back, I would definitely like to get more into this topic. Thank you. Hey everybody, it's Nick Lynch and I'm back with 1450 WSTU, the Treasure Coast Forum on Martin County's Heritage Station. I know we left off on a really heavy subject about social justice and protesting. And I'd like to have another guided discussion about modern day protests. So we've kind of talked about the peaceful protests, and we've talked about sit-ins and bus boycotts. But I'd like to kind of get into modern day protests and what are going on right now in our communities. So physically, we've seen tons of protests come out of the Black Lives Matter organization, all being peaceful. And we've also seen things like social media protests. So that would be something like Blackout Tuesday, which was an event where people on social media posted a black screen just to show and sit in solidarity, just to show everyone that this is a extremely prolific issue. And I thought that was really cool. So you're either supposed to post a black screen or not post at all, just to show what we need to move forward to as a society. Noyana, do you want to talk about that at all?
I did not get to personally experience it or see it, since I do not use social media, but I felt very, very happy just hearing from my friends when that did occur, how they just felt so, I felt so proud of the people who took the time to do something like that. Since even though I said earlier in one of my arguments that, technology is being used against us, this is one of the ways that actually disproves that. And I love that. What about you, John?
Well, I also don't use social media actually, but I kind of agree. I find it really beautiful that people did take their time out of the day just to do that. I mean, people could just sit back and watch like some of us usually do. You see somebody pass by, they're struggling a little bit. Most people don't stop and help them. But I find it nice to know there's some times like these where we just sit alone and just help each other along through these hard times. We have many things that just happened. We had a hurricane that just run through. It tore apart their infrastructure, and I hope they get back up. And we have hackers online aiming at schools. And we even have a pandemic running around. It's a hard time, and I'm just glad people are helping each other out.
Yeah, definitely. And it's specifically with that Blackout Tuesday social media event, I was extremely just thrilled that happened, because really throughout my entire social media feed, that was all I saw aside from sponsored ads. So no one really abused it. And I was happy that people kind of took it as it was and didn't try to make it their own or change it in any way. I was just happy that people tried to be activists in that way. And then I know, John, you've got more on the Trump administration. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, actually. Thank you, Nick. Anyways, recently in the Trump administration, there is a plan to remove the endangered gray wolf from being protected. Personally, I find this very wrong. I mean, they're only starting to get back up, even though their numbers are good. Many states don't even have laws that just prohibit like hunting these animals. It's the same with like many other animals. Like if they just blatantly take it off immediately without the states having any sort of protection against these animals, some do, but most of them do not. And I mean, do not at all. It's going to go horribly wrong. First of all, most people know in stuff as Africa, there's some horrible things going on, such as hunting of elephants and such. This could very well go the same way of people just hunting these wolves and then just using them as trophy prizes and hanging them up in their walls and just be like, yes, I hunt that one down in Florida this year. I do not want it to end up like that, and I find it very wrong that they can just wipe it off the endangered list without doing any help with them. And who knows what could go on with the other animals if this passes.
Yeah. I know specifically in Florida, we've done a lot to protect our ecosystem, especially because that is a huge driving factor in our state's economy. But I'm definitely all for, like I mentioned earlier, the bird watching endowment that was given. I think it's great that we're trying to, in this day and age, trying to preserve our nation's ecosystems and trying to keep specific animals protected. And I can't at all agree with us getting rid of gray wolf protections. I think that under any circumstances is extremely awful, just because we're going to lose a crucial part of our food web, food chain. And it creates problems with our entire world, essentially, if things go extinct. Noyana, do you want to talk about that at all?
Protect the gray wolves. I don't know much about that stuff, but yes, I do agree with your opinions. So protect the gray wolves.
And then as far as Noyana, do you want to talk about the other section you had on social justice and history for a couple minutes?
Sure. So I went into my community and asked a handful of people, what have they had any racist experiences within the places they grew up with? And most of these people were in Martin County, actually. So, but all of them come from different walks of life. And so I'd like to share a story or two or maybe three that maybe might inspire you to be mindful, especially of those who are within the community of people of color and even white people. So first one, I was shocked to hear this, actually. So I have a friend, and she says that she's received so many comments, especially back when she was down here, that, oh, you're really pretty for a black girl, or the way you talk is not black. She's also been questioned about her hairstyle, which is, I can tell you from personal experience, the number one thing a black girl will definitely go through is her own identity and how her hair fits into society standards. So due to be constantly being questioned about how her hair, or why your hair is like this, or why is it like that, she wears it in simply braids. And she told me a rather alarming story that one of her friends was actually fetishized for being black. Weird, really weird. And she also brought up a really important point that I'd like to make clear. Racism is not only between white people and black people. That's what's being portrayed, and I understand that may be a major issue, but it's not the only thing, and people need to be mindful about that. Because even within my own community, there's racism. As she has personally lived through and seen that a big thing within our community is that black men do not treat or respect black women the same as they would treat or respect a white woman, which is something that she's had to experience, seen, and it's affected the way that people view her when she expresses her opinion about it, and I don't think that should be the case at all. Another scenario that shocked me was the fact that, I'll make it quick, a friend's stepfather used to live in a complex in Stewart, and when they invited their Hispanic friends to go to the pool, the cops were called since they received a report saying that the maintenance people got into the pool without permission. Interesting. That's all I can share for you, but I hope that hopefully leaves you a little bit more mindful about what's even going on here locally. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you everybody for attending the show today. And we'll be back next week with the Treasure Coast Forum. Thank you.